Thanks for coming, and it's totally crazy that on Saturday someone wants a lecture. Oh my God. Well, it's good that see all of you and to share whatever I know about propaganda, which is, of course, not the answer to all our questions. But let's start because this was the topic that Free Russia NL, right, announced. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Fenko, and I live here actually for almost 16 years. When I came here, Putin was already a president, but for the first time. So I didn't really experience how this propaganda was growing in Russia, how it was all intensified, but it was quite clear already in the beginning of Putin's ruling that something is not going to, according to our dreams, let's say. But what am I doing here? I came here to do a PhD in persuasive design, which is practically propaganda, but made with things. So, for instance, if you have this garbage bin that is so attractive that everyone wants to interact with it, that's persuasive design, because it kind of persuades you to throw your garbage not on the street, but in this very nice and interactive garbage bin that talks to you, sings to you, or does whatever. You've seen that probably. These things, they are called persuasive design. So to help people to do the right thing. And from there, I also started looking into other persuasive techniques, like, for instance, how can we make healthy food attractive? What should we put on the package of healthy food? Should we say it's healthy? Well, probably not, because if people see that it's healthy, they think, well, maybe it's not very tasty, and I deserve something tasty. So this type of tricks, they are very well known in health communication, in marketing, and together, and in propaganda, of course. And together, this field, how to persuade people, is called persuasive communication. By the way, I have it's a challenge to translate it into Russian. What is persuasive communication in Russian? I have no idea, honestly. I would say it's, when I try to say it in Russian, I say «наука убеждать». That's propaganda for you, right? So it's just only in political thing. So on top of teaching at University of Amsterdam, I'm also doing some non-profit projects, and mostly about also persuading people to live sustainable life properly in our a world that is kind of sinking in garbage. So don't use disposable bottles. How do we how do we persuade consumers to not to buy 167th t-shirt? So how we do that? That's also persuasive communication. In a way, it's also propaganda. And so I'm also involved in health communication, and the last project we started before the war started was kind of optimistically called Back to Normal, because we were trying to deal with the negative consequences of Corona for mental health. So now it really sounds totally ironic. So no one wants to hear about it, unfortunately. But so this is about me, and about this talk. The reason I think I got invited people or media is because the first months, after the first months of the war, I wrote this article for, I think it's a new media, right? E-Stories. So it is a new independent media, and it just so happened that one of my former colleagues worked there, so he invited me to write there. And by the way, if your English is not perfect. So if you are not if not everything is clear, you can just read it in Russian. So at least we have, or just open it, because what I will say, it's more or less based on the same ideas. But of course, 2 months already passed, right? It was 25th of March, and now it's exactly 25th of June. So yeah, well, it's crazy. It's already 4 months, right, of war. Oh my God! And it's not going to stop any time soon. So what instead of just telling you my own experience with this total kind of dividing of families, dividing of friends, this division within Russian society, I will just tell you that this documentary of Andrei Lashak that was published just recently, right? I think it's like several days ago. Who saw it? Okay, so everyone, almost. So whoever didn't have time to see it, this is actually it's a perfect illustration of our topic, right? Because it is, we can tell the stories of our own friends and families to each other, and we can listen also to to the stories of our Ukrainian friends who can't understand why, for instance, their own family tells them, well, you started it. You are all Nazis. And some people they don't know. Some people they just met on holiday several years ago, and they are like from Italy or from Africa. They call, they care, they want to help. They even provide some practical means to escape from war. But their own relatives, they just don't care. So how is that possible? How did we come to this situation where families are divided and no one is listening to each other, and everyone is accusing each other of being brainwashed? So I think, well, I have it in my family. My husband has it with his brother. I have it with my brother-in-law, and it just goes on and on and on. I think everyone probably has people in their immediate surroundings who are, in spite of being smart, kind, normal, civilized, still are poisoned by propaganda. So how come? How is it possible? So this is actually, I can tell you from the beginning, I don't have answers how it is possible, but I can give some general information to help you think for yourself. And I'll start with just like working definition of propaganda, which is not it's not written, I don't know, in Wikipedia. It's just more or less common sense. So for me, propaganda is the form of persuasive communication. So the communication that wants to persuade you of something. And it is, the goal is to influence your thinking, your emotions, and your behavior. So for instance, it is in a way, but it is political. So the difference from, for instance, health communication. Health communication tells you, well, if you keep smoking, you'll die. That's persuasive communication, but it is just, the goal is to persuade you to change your behavior, right? So propaganda also have different goals. And the goals can be different in terms of they don't always want you to change your attitudes, to change your beliefs. Because sometimes they just want you to keep your previous beliefs. So strengthen your existing attitudes and behaviors. So if you were kind of thinking that Ukraine is not a real state, by hearing it 15 times a day that Ukraine is not a real state, you just strengthen your own beliefs. So that's how propaganda can work on, let's say, like-minded people, right? And of course, our relatives and friends, we kind of think, well, they are not from this group of people, right? They are normal people who believe that Ukrainians are the same as anyone else, and they have the right for their own state. So what can propaganda do to, let's say, more normal people, more liberal and civilized people? Well, the more kind of ambitious goal is to change people's attitudes and behavior. And of course, there are other goals. For instance, one of the goals is to induce skepticism. So we will talk about that. It's very important because already from the beginning of the war 8 years ago, it was clear that propaganda doesn't want people to all see the same reality. It just creates a lot of different a lot of noise, a lot of different versions of reality, and people just became skeptical. So no one is telling the truth. You are also lying. Europeans are lying. BBC is lying. CNN is lying. Yeah, of course we also lie, but it's our lie. It's better than your lie. So that is skepticism. So kind of not believing that the truth exists and that anyone can actually be telling the truth. And finally, what people can do, what we all want our friends and relatives to do with propaganda, we want them to actively resist it, right? So this is what we would like to know, how we can teach people, how we can give people some kind of tools to resist propaganda. It's the same as this friend of our previous speaker was thinking about. It's very kind of logical to think about tools. So, well, we just have a brochure, and the brochure will explain what fake news are and how to how to recognize them, and then all of a sudden everything is solved. So, like, give people tools, and they will apply these tools. Well, unfortunately, it's not working like that, and the reason is that a lot of research from like 1960s, which is already 60 years, right? They kind of noticed that no tools will work after people already have strong opinion about something. So when people change their views, or when people strongly believe in something, there are no ways to change it back. So, but if you have some kind of vaccination that is called inoculation, actually a fancy word for vaccination, the same thing, and if you manage somehow to give these tools before people are exposed to propaganda, then the tools become really handy. So people can use the tools, like separating fake news from truthful news, only when they are exposed to the tools before they are exposed to propaganda. This is called inoculation theory. So just to sum up what inoculation theory says, it is the theory from 1960s. So individuals who are exposed to kind of a little bit more stupid, simplified arguments against their beliefs, they actually develop resistance. It's very easy if the arguments against your belief are stupid, it's very easy to create counter-arguments, right? So then these people who are exposed to this kind of stupid arguments against their beliefs, they are really immune. They become immune to propaganda. And so the way it works, you have different elements. So you have this two-component vaccine, almost like Moderna. Moderna is two-component vaccine. So then we have a threat. So you say to people, well, there are people out there who want you to believe in something. And they will actually try to convince you. But what they are saying is not true. So that is disproof. So two components, the warning, so people will try to tell you something, and disproof. Just showing that what they are saying is total nonsense. And then people themselves have to develop the counter-argument. So you don't really give people this counter-argument, they have to think for themselves a little bit, just train their brains, and then it's all fine. And the finding that were collected during this last 60 years, especially the last 20 years, they all point to one big conclusion, that this technique works in many cases, but only when vaccination is before propaganda. And I will just give you a couple of illustrations. This one actually is not in the paper, but I think it is really nice because I'm also interested in the opinion of our journalists and propaganda kind of creators' opinion about this game. Because the game actually is designed to create this inoculation, or to teach people how to resist propaganda. But what you do if you start this game, if you are participating in this game, it just kind of welcomes you, and it is asking you to create fake news, to create some kind of persuasive message which is not true. And so by doing that, you learn the methods, and then, well, this one actually is one of the examples of the messages that you were asked to create, and this is fake news from Donald Trump, then the president, and it says that after the long deliberation with my generals, I here decided to declare war on North Korea, which obviously was fake news in 2020. Well, unfortunately, on 24th of February, changing Trump to Putin, it was not fake. It was like actual news. But just a couple of years before, it was so unbelievable that everyone kind of understood that it's not true. And by playing this game, people of different countries developed really good resistance to persuasion. So they were less likely to be poisoned by any kind of propaganda messages. Why? Because they learned how it was created. They were participating in creating this fake news, and by doing that, they kind of increased their digital literacy. Of course, it's a good tool for school children if you are working with students or kids. It's a fun game to play, and then children will be actually vaccinated against the future propaganda. So, for instance, here is the results for 3 countries. I think they had more countries where they tested this game, of course, all in the in the native language of these countries. So in Polish, Greek, and German. And one thing about this graph that I want you to kind of to notice, that no tool can actually kind of lower the resistance from like 10 to 0. There is always some people who can do better, and some people who can still believe in everything. So, well, what it says that, okay, the difference between these two groups in their resistance to fake news and to propaganda, it is significant, meaning that the blue kind of bars are higher than the red bars, but they're both kind of not 0. So everyone still is in danger of being persuaded by propaganda. So it's not 100% sure, but it works to some extent. And then there is another example, and this example I described in detail in the paper. I won't actually explain all the details here, but I just want you to get just general idea. Okay, so there is a conspiracy theory in the United States, and it just assumes that, well, whatever happened on 9/11 was actually not the result of terrorist attack, but it was the result of the complot from special forces. So practically, covered up operation. And for Russians, it reminds of something, right? We also have this story about 1999. But it's just the other way around. It just, at that point, no one believed that it is a complot, and that it's like like really special operation by, Secret Service. But now it gets more and more obvious that it probably was. But of course, for 9/11 attack, it's probably not true, right? And well, at least we still believe that whoever did that was indeed terrorists from Al Qaeda. So, but at like 10 years ago and 10 years after the 9/11, roughly, the researchers were trying to figure out how it works. So there was at the time the movie called Loose Change Final Cut. This is practically the example of the same propaganda message as you can see on Russian TV today. It was done practically by the group of volunteers trying to convince the Americans that all this tragedy was the making of Secret Service with kind of the help of the government, of a lot of like journalists. So a lot of people were involved. That's their message. Okay, and if you watch this movie, you can, it is still on YouTube. You can watch it and see how convincing it is. If it is convincing at all for you. But what the experiment was doing, they actually first had like the normal students from American universities to watch the movie. So one group only watched the movie. So this is, let's say, a pure propaganda effect they were measuring. Then there is a group 2. The group 2 had inoculation, so vaccination against this movie, but it was, of course, done as normal vaccination before watching the movie. So before watching the movie, people were warned about the errors, the factual errors that this movie contains. For instance, one obvious is seen on this picture. So everyone saw the planes, but no one saw people putting this explosive in the basement of this building. So why would you believe something that no one saw and not believe something that everyone saw? This type of factual information. And another type of vaccination was kind of trying to find the logical inconsistencies in the movie. Because the movie says, well, it's all a complot that involves like thousands of people. And then the logical argument was, if there is such a complot, how come that no one actually leaked this information? Because if you have like 1,000 people knowing about it, especially in America, there are very big chances that someone will actually leak this information, but no one did. So it's all kind of total imagination. So this type of inoculation was used. So now we have one group that saw the movie and two groups that saw the movie with preliminary vaccination, inoculation. And there was also group number 4. And this group number 4 is very interesting because it had also this inoculation, but before the vaccination, they had like vaccination against vaccination. And this is important because that is what your relatives had, the people who believe propaganda. What they had was, in this experiment, there was this message. Before they start vaccinating, they actually said, well, you know what, there will be people who will try to change your attitudes about specific issues. And there are some arguments for these ideas, and there are some arguments against these ideas. But you are smart, you will figure it out. Don't make other people change your beliefs. This is kind of vaccination against vaccination. It's called meta-inoculation in scientific literature, but we can call it vaccine against vaccine. And there is a final group that didn't see any movie, which is important in all experiments to have a control group, just to know whether your manipulation actually is different from zero. And here are roughly the results. So first of all, there are still quite some people, almost 40%. Without any propaganda, they kind of tended to believe that it was all complot. So here you are. You have, free American society with free press. Everyone can say everything. So you still have 37% of people who believe that 9/11 was a government complot. At that moment, it was at a specific moment and in a specific group. Well, students of some Midwest universities. These Midwest people that are now prohibiting abortion. So they are kind of right-wing people. Okay, and then when you just see the movie without any vaccination, well, the amount of, the percentage of people who believe raises to 50%. And this is just one movie, 1.5 hours, made not by professionals. It's just made by volunteers on a home computer. That's it. Very big effect of propaganda. Okay, so what about vaccination? You remember there are two ways of vaccination. First, there are facts that are opposite to what you've heard, and the facts work quite well. So instead of 37% and instead of 50%, we have only a quarter of people who are still believing in this complot theory. So, but good result. Not perfect, not 100%, but it is still a very valid result. And the logic works a little bit less, because it's very difficult to compare arguments. Well, facts are easy to understand, and people are lazy to switch on their brains. We'll talk about it in a minute. And then there is this group that was asked to compare two points of view, propaganda and the vaccination, and make their own decision. And this is the result on top. So what you see that actually this meta-inoculation, so vaccine against vaccine, it totally it made this whole vaccination kind of useless. Because people totally returned to their previous ideas, and they didn't change their attitudes and their beliefs, but they also didn't actually they didn't develop any kind of resistance to propaganda. So this is the story, which is I understand it's difficult to grasp, but bear with me because it is exactly what's happening with Russian propaganda. I give you this example of MH17, and this example is kind of a very it is very relevant for the country where we are now, right? So, and those of you who live here long enough, You all remember that it was like the major tragedy in the Netherlands because like 200 people died, and it was a kind of, at that moment, Europe realized, okay, the war is going on. It is happening. There is something terrible happening. But if you looked at that moment, I was still traveling back and forth to Russia, and I was still kind of looking at like occasionally into this Russian TV propaganda window, and then you realize that how this tragedy is described on Russian state TV and in Russian media. Their strategy at that moment, their tactics, was not to deny everything and to just say, okay, this is our way of explaining this event. It's all like one point of view. No. What they did, they created a lot of noise. They created a lot of contradictory versions of reality, including the ones that is like, oh, actually, there were not real people on this plane. There were people who were already dead, like from the morgue. So you well, some of you who are old enough, you can still remember this nonsense. And then, oh my God, how people can believe that bullshit? Well, no, the goal is not to make people to believe this bullshit. The goal is to make people overloaded, confused, and to make them skeptical. Because if you ask people to think for yourself and you don't give them any tools, how am I supposed to think for myself? Then people got confused. And then when people are confused, then something interesting happens to them. So what happens to them is described in a very famous book, and I hope you all know this book, right? Thinking Fast and Slow. In Russia, it has some idiotic title. Who knows how it's called in Russia? Anyone remembers? Kahneman? Yeah, well, that's totally not relevant, the title, because it's both about thinking. It's all about processing our information. And what Kahneman actually kind of proposed, and it is backed by, his research started from 1970s. At some point, he received Nobel Prize for them. So it's not all kind of light and popular science that you can read in this book. There is a lot, like decennia of research behind it. And what this theory actually says, it's currently accepted by all cognitive scientists, by all behavioral scientists, that we process information and we make decisions based on either system 1 or system 2. And system 1 is like primitive but very quick. And this system actually is the survival mechanism. So it is based on intuition, emotion, and it's not based on thinking slow. So system 1 is rational thinking. And the problem with system 2 is the rational thinking. And the problem with the system is that it requires a lot of resources. You know, our brain eats a lot of sugar, so we need this brain sugar. Our brain actually needs some peace and quiet, and it needs time. So who has time? No one. And it also needs motivation, so you really have to want to think. Why would you? It is difficult. So people don't want to do difficult things. People don't really do that. They only do that when there are a lot of conditions met. First, they are highly motivated to know the truth. They are experts, so they have access to information, they have mental tools, and they have all the necessary knowledge available to think. That's the second one. So the expertise, motivation, time. They really need time and quiet, and they shouldn't be stressed. So a lot only when all these conditions are met, then we can think. And honestly, it happens in 2% of our normal life. So I don't know what the examples are. Well, maybe when you were deciding to move to the Netherlands, you should probably switch on system 2. Because it's a life-changing decision. So probably you all thought very hard about that.
No stress?
But there was stress. So for some of you, it might also be system 1 decision. Yeah, you see, it's so difficult to find all these conditions met. And of course, they are not met when you have this meta-inoculation kind of intervention. So whenever anyone tells you, compare different arguments and decide for yourself. Well, it's easy to say, compare different arguments and decide for yourself. But first, you don't have motivation to do that, then you don't have time for that, and you don't have resources, mental resources, you don't have all the information available to do that. So what you do instead, you switch to system 1. And system 1 is emotional, intuitive, and it works totally irrationally. So you switch to this emotional thinking, and here you have this perfect illustration of post-truth propaganda. So it's not one reality against another reality. It is creating the multiple controversial versions of reality. So whoever is trying to figure out what the truth is it has the person who tries to find the truth in this post-truth reality, the person has to process a lot of information. And do we have time for that? Well, we are just stopped on the street by some kind of Russian, RT journalist. Are you against the war or you for? Yeah, are you against Ukraine or you for Ukraine? So of course I'm loyal. I'm just doing my shopping. Just go away. I don't want to think. And then, of course, there is also no motivation, and there is a real danger to say something. So people don't want to think, because thinking is not only difficult, it's on top of that, it's dangerous. And on top of that, it's so uncomfortable. Because, so anything that creates the reality when, everything is equally untrue, that is skeptical, right? So we are becoming, and it was really in this, in the beginning of this previous, the conflict on Donbass, when I noticed that a lot of my friends, and especially a lot of the children of my friends, because the people who were in their 20s, they became so much more cynical compared to my students in the Netherlands. It was unbelievable how quickly they became cynical. And then some 20-something guy was kind of telling me the story about the dead people from the morgue that were put on the plane, and I was like, well, some of my colleagues' children were there. They were not from the morgue. They were from my own personal network. How can you say that? Okay, then there is a Spanish flight dispatcher. Oh no, then there is this Ukrainian book rocket. Oh, then it's just and then I realized that truth doesn't matter. Even the factual truth doesn't matter. And you can, by this doing this inoculation, by making this noisy environment where everything can happen, everything can, of course we are lying, but you are lying too. So this is the, it's not just all of a sudden. So the inoculation for meta-inoculation for what's happening now happened already 8 years ago. That's my main point. So people now are not only now exposed to propaganda, they were exposed to this poisonous reality where they were actually told that objective truth does not exist. So that's, and when on top of that, what you have, so you are in this quick emotional system one thinking, and then it's easy to appeal to your emotions, especially fear, anger, and on top of that you create the enemy, and on top of that you induce violence. So that's like the totally poisonous recipe for what's going on now. And it's all happening when you switch off your thinking. So you switch off your thinking mode, then you have this monsters in your head. So that is practically what happens. And when you are confused, scared, and you stop thinking, then you respond according to so-called peripheral cues. In communication science, you have like central cues. Okay, what is the message? Then you analyze the message. You analyze the source of the message. That's the central cues. But there are peripheral cues. Okay, what are other people doing? Oh, other people are making this Z on their cars, on their clothes, on whatever. Okay, other people are doing that. There might be some something. They probably know something. So I will just do whatever will behave the same as other people. That's the survival mechanism. Following others, following this kind of all of a sudden created social norms, it's like the very primitive mechanism of survival. So people don't want to think, they don't want to know why is it that. Well, you just do as other people do, and then you might be out of danger. And of course, emotions. We might think that we need this, of course we need this compassion, and we need this kind of kindness, which is also an emotional thing. But we have it anyway, so also animals have it, right? So our emotions are not very different from the animal emotions, and it has been proven also many years ago, and there are books on that. So here you can have like extra kind of topics on that, right? So it's a different type of, different area of science, but we know that we are not very different from animals in the emotions we are feeling. The only thing that is different is system 2. So how do we actually, how can we have anything against propaganda? These are all obvious tools. So how can we think slow? Well, we can only think slow when we have time, right? And we only can use our logic if we are motivated to think. So what can motivate your relatives to actually start switching on their brains? Well, in the movie, in the documentary of Lashak, there were a couple of mothers that kind of started to move towards away from propaganda a little bit, right? If you notice that. And they had a very strong motivation because they loved their daughters. And this is something that, people, if we try to keep, to keep dialogue, not to be, not to incite this violence and aggression against each other, but kind of stay in the dialogue. Just call and ask about the weather and just health, something like that. And because if we all become enemies, then we won't talk to each other and we won't listen. Only when we have still some motivation, and motivation, of course, is our love for our relatives and friends. Then, of course, all the tools are well known. So your friend who told about this, comparing, fact-checking. So this is indeed like the lists are all existing. So in the Dutch schools, it's now this digital literacy and this kind of media literacy is what is actually part of the program for secondary schools, like, right? So everyone knows how to teach that. It's just the motivation, time, effort, these things are missing. And also what is making it difficult is that people are becoming very cynical. And that's one of this most kind of vicious and most poisoning working of this meta-inoculation, so actually vaccination against vaccination, then people become confused, people become cynical, people don't believe in truth. That's why I have this image of what is truth? Religious painting from a Russian painter, actually. So this is the whole kind of course, it's kind of a Christian legend, but it actually stays true to any atheist. I'm not religious, I'm atheist, but I still believe in objective truth. Because if you stop believing in this, if you become too postmodern, if you stop believe in facts, if it doesn't really matter how many people died and who is responsible, then of course you can, the propaganda, anything becomes possible, and then we have these monsters in our brains that are eating up everything. And then, of course, another thing which is important is, all the animals have empathy for their own group. So this is emotional. So we are not different from apes in this one. What animals don't have, they don't have out-group empathy. So if you are too divided, you start thinking that the other group is not human. And it happened, it's not only happening to Russians and Ukrainians. There were many cases, there were many events that made people actually that divided that they stopped being empathetic, they stopped actually seeing the other group as human beings. Well, even Trump made it in 4 years in America, where people were also divided within their families, so they stopped treating each other as human anymore, because, well, how can any reasonable human being believe in that? Well, how can any reasonable human being believe in this? So we are not reasonable, we are not human, so we can just fight each other. And that's what's happening when we stop thinking logically. So my main message is just, practically switch on your own brain and try to find this different kind of resources. Provide resources for your loved ones to switch on the brain. Provide kindness, provide motivation, provide time, and provide resources. Information itself is not working. It's only working with all the other things. Safe environment, friendliness, this type of things. Otherwise, it won't work. And I really hope that at least some people will become reasonable, provided these resources. And thank you for your time. So now we can go to discussions, questions, whatever.